And joining us now for more from New York is Rabbi Marc Schneier, the president of the Foundation for Ethnic Understanding. And Rabbi Schneier, you have been one of the most prominent Jewish figures, even before the Abraham Accords, certainly after, traveling in the Gulf in these countries, promoting relations between the UAE, Bahrain, other countries there, with Israel and the wider Jewish community. Is there now cause for concern for Jews there in the Emirates and elsewhere, either those who live there or those like yourself traveling there?
Well, first, let me tell you how saddened I am by this tragedy. Rabbi Kogan, back in 2022, assisted my rabbinic team in facilitating kosher food at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, in Doha. So on a personal note, I need to express my own feelings of sadness on this unspeakable tragedy. Yes, there needs to be concern for the simple reason that the current conflict, the war between Israel and Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, et cetera, this has evolved into a global conflict between Muslims and Jews. It's not limited just to the region. We find this in Europe. Look at what happened in Amsterdam just 2 weeks ago, in Germany, here in North America and Latin America. Throughout the world, there is a global conflict between 16 million Jews and 1.8 billion Muslims, and why we must be vigilant in terms of travel and visiting countries throughout the world today.
Now, what about specifically, though, in places like the Gulf, for example? And certainly, one has to point out, as we pointed out in that report, the UAE and Bahrain have maintained their relations with Israel throughout this very difficult period. But at the same time, these are countries that have relations with Iran. These are countries that have relations with other countries, certainly with populations hostile to Israel. What about in those specific circumstances?
Well, I think we need to pay attention closely to the reaction on the part of UAE officials to the murder of Rabbi Kogan. I mean, they were hell-bent on swift justice. They expressed their anger and their outrage. My distinguished friend, the UAE ambassador here in Washington, Ambassador Yusuf Al-Otaiba, was unequivocal in stating how this was an attack on the UAE, to quote him, on its values and on our vision. So they took this very personally. I must tell you that they responded in such a rapid time, probably more than any other European country. So on one hand, you're correct, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Egypt, Jordan, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, these are Muslim and Muslim majority countries that have maintained their support for Israel, for the Jewish people, in the midst of this conflict. But I come back to my original point, the very sad reality that because of the war, we have seen an escalation, a heightening of tensions between Jews and Muslims worldwide. And why we need to find some resolution to this conflict. We cannot be in a continued state of 16 million Jews in conflict with 1.8 billion Muslims.
Well, certainly everyone wants a resolution to these conflicts, but until that happens, Rabbi Schneier, is there something the Israeli government could be doing more to help ensure the safety, security of Jews abroad and in those countries in the region? Is there something more the global Jewish leadership, Jewish groups should be doing to help out in this situation?
Well, I think two things. First, we need to remain vigilant. I know that these countries work closely with Israel, with the United States. But we also need to try and find a resolution. I feel very, very strongly about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia really being the resolution to this conflict. People forget, Caleb, that Saudi Arabia is the spiritual center of Islam. It is the custodian of Mecca and Medina. I feel very strongly that if the spiritual center of Islam were to normalize relations with the Jewish state, how that message would resonate, would reverberate throughout the Islamic world, in the Middle East, in Europe, in North America, in Indonesia, throughout the world. And I think we need to acknowledge that there is a resolution to this conflict that can also lower the temperature between Muslims and Jews worldwide.
All right. Well, a good message to leave us with. Rabbi Marc Schneier, President, Foundation for Ethnic Understanding. Thank you for joining us on Jewish World
My pleasure. Thank you.